What I have here is a Canon ImagePROGRAF PRO-4000, and I'm going to pull it all apart. It might have some items in it I can use. Should be a few motors and fans at least. Maybe some springs and metal. I know there's at least one precision metal rod the carriage rides on. But by tearing it apart, I hope to understand a little bit better how it's put together, and maybe how better to work on them. The first thing is getting the cover off to access the internal parts. I'll show a quick location of screws for the removal of the cover pieces. Maybe not in the best order, as I've never torn one of these down before. 4 screws have to be removed from each end cover. Then the cover will pull off of a couple plastic clips. Both end covers are removed the same way. 2 screws here hold this plastic piece on. It seems that the entire cover is mostly held in place with screws, and that's quite nice. I much prefer screws over hunting for plastic clips. 2 screws hold the right front cover on, one here and the other here. Behind this cover is the maintenance tank and purge assembly. 1 screw here holds the left top cover in place. It just pulls right off. The lift-up access cover here is held in place by a line of screws here. Once the screws are removed, the cover will just lift off. Very nice how that comes off, much better than the older printers. The left front cover is held in place by 2 screws here. The back has both plastic and metal covers. The metal cover is held in place by these screws. The 3 pieces of plastic cover here are held in place by these screws. Each ink tank cover has 3 screws, one on the back here, one on the inside here, and one on the top here. Behind the back metal cover are the main control board and the power supply, and a whole lot of wiring. This top cover is all tied together with screws here, and that about does it for the case of the printer. Let me start pulling off some of the pieces. The control panel just snaps out of its plastic holder. Don't really see anything there that's usable. Well, there's a small motor. That I'll save. I really like these wire clips. I may save some of them to have on hand. The purge unit looks like it has a couple of small DC motors in it, so 3 small motors so far. The paper cutter motor and drive mechanism is right here. Pretty good sized brush DC motor, geared way down to drive a toothed belt. I may want to see if I can get that all out in one piece. The carriage is under here, and I believe to remove it will require removing this support right here. Only looks like there are 2 screws at each end of the support. A pretty solid piece of steel. Now the carriage assembly is accessible. I believe this carriage houses the most expensive part of the printer, the print head. Of course, this print head is defective. Have to say those levers feel kinda flimsy, but I'm sure they want to keep the weight down as much as possible. Looks like silicone ink tubes. Would never get the ink cleaned out of them though. So worthless. So the carriage just lifts off the rails. That kinda surprises me. Could not do that with the older version of these Canon printers. The carriage belt is tensioned by this mechanism. Have to remove a screw to get the tension pulley to move. Belt is held to the carriage by a single screw and clip. I'm pretty sure to access the flat flex cable connectors, have to remove 4 screws somewhere about here. The screws are the small black ones and not the silver ones. So the following is not the proper way to access the FFC connections. I'm just pulling out all the screws. I do want this cable chain as it looks to be very nice. Now this could get very messy, but the plastic tubes don't look like there is much ink in them. Normally to access this head relay board, all the tubing and cable chain would stay connected to the plastic top cover. These 4 FFCs work their way back to the main board. These 2 are a very fine pitch, so I think they are the signal lines. These 2 here are a much coarser pitch, so probably power. And I would think it would take a bit of power to fire off so many inkjet nozzles. These FFCs here go down to the print head contact board. And this FFC here goes to the optical sensor for the carriage position. The sensor reads this plastic strip right back here. Quite a setup. Pretty nice cable chain. That I will keep. Ink tank holders look to come off as one assembly. Have one screw that allows the unit to swivel out, allowing access to the parts behind it. Very nice. Looks like 4 electrical plugs and an ink tube connection. A lot of wires. A bit surprised. I would think nowadays it would be cheaper to just have a power, ground, and a couple of signal wires. The ink tube connector is really on there good. Oh yeah, now this is going to get a bit messy. Very nice the way the entire assembly connects. Just need to remove these 2 screws to take the ink tank holder assembly off. If I would get it clear of the metal brackets, it just lifts right off. Got to say, that's a pretty nice design. This one I just took off was working okay. But this one is defective. I hope I get the time to tear into it and see just what happened to it. Hard to see, but down here on the bottom tray where it is dark, that is old dried ink, and it shouldn't be there. This unit was leaking ink, and I think the Canon ink is over $1,500 a gallon, so can see one of the reasons this printer got scrapped. I think this is a fan. Well, it's a blower. And 32 volts. So that's not as good as I was hoping it would be. Have 2 of them, but a lot less useful than if it was a regular fan. Well, it's starting to look like there's not a lot of really good parts in this thing. I think there will be 6 to 8 small brush DC motors. The fans being 32 volt, really a bit disappointing. They might run okay off of 24 volts. I'll have to give that a try. If not, probably just end up tossing them. I will save some of the wire harness clips. I really like these. Don't know what they're called, but I need to find out who makes them. The carriage drive motor is not a brush DC motor. It looks like a 3-phase motor with the drive circuit on the main board. Too bad the motor drive is not built into the motor. So even though the motor looks like a very nice high quality motor, it won't be easy to use, but I will hang on to it. A lot of wires running everywhere in this thing. Looks like the only serial data might be between the main board and the user input panel. Well, there has to be an immense data channel between the main board and the carriage. Has to be quite a bit of data to feed those over 18,000 nozzles. And the flat cable is around 6 feet, so that is quite an impressive feat. There are 2 round steel guide rods. One is 10mm and the other 8mm in diameter, so those I will save. Put it in my scrap metal stack, as I don't have much hardened precision rod in it. It looks like the entire rigidity of the printer is made up from formed sheet metal pieces, screwed or, in a few places, spot welded together. A lot of metal pieces and a lot of plastic pieces, and most of them are screwed in place, so these printers have to be a bit on the expensive side to assemble. 2 main wiring harnesses, one for the left side of the printer and the other for the right side. More wiring in the thing than I was expecting. Doesn't look like any effort was put into reducing wiring, and that may be the best decision for reliability reasons. The stand, I may try to use it for something. It's not a heavy-duty stand, so probably hit the scrap metal pile. So not a lot of useful parts. Really, it's not worth scrapping out, unless one wants to learn how one of these is put together. So I think that would be the only reason to tear one apart. A lot of time and not much to show for it. But I still enjoy taking stuff apart. So there is that. Thank you for watching.